Hello there, welcome back to my channel and welcome to this side-by-side foundation comparison and wear test of the new Bareminerals BarePro Liquid Matte Foundation versus the original. I have been testing this new formulation out. I have some thoughts, but I have never actually done a side-by-side comparison, so I'm gonna bring you along for that. It's a cold, rainy day. It suddenly just got really dark outside, so forgive me if the lighting changes, and we'll see what happens with all of our check-ins, but we're gonna do the best we can. I'm gonna go ahead and clip my hair out of the way. I haven't done any of the rest of my makeup. I'll do that after I get the foundation on. I'm starting later in the day, so I want to go ahead and get this foundation on so we can leave it on for at least 8 to 10 hours. We'll see. So first off, the packaging is different. The packaging on the new BarePro Matte has this nice frosted glass bottle. It still has a locking pump with a cap. I appreciate that. I'll get into the ingredients a little bit later on. The original has glass packaging also, but it's kind of a natural glass finish, but also with a locking pump. Now, this is the second shade that I've tried. The first shade I got was light 21 neutral. I was using the comparison chart, and typically I go for, let's see, golden nude 13. I have about 5 shades of the original, and that one in the matte formula was just too light, too pale. So I exchanged it for light 22 warm, which is supposed to be the equivalent to warm natural 12. So they're pretty close, and it might be a little pale for what my sunless tan color is, but we're gonna go with it. For application today, I'll do a combination of 2 different types of applicators. I'm gonna start off with the damp beauty sponge, which is my preferred way to apply the original. And then maybe on my forehead, I will go in with a brush so we can just have some good comparisons. On my skin, I have done my normal go-to skincare with serum, moisturizer, and sunscreen, even though I'm not going out and it's not sunny at all. I wanted to give you a really true picture side by side of what would typically happen as far as my skin prep goes. So on the right side, I'm gonna go ahead and apply the matte BarePro. And so I just dipped my finger in, and now I'm gonna go in with this damp sponge. And I have hardly ever used a primer with the original BarePro. I have been using the original BarePro since it first came out, and it has been my #1 top favorite foundation. So this new one claims to be new and improved. Yeah, we'll talk more about that as we go along. Okay, there is one light layer blended in, and I feel like that blended in very easily. Obviously, this is not full coverage because I used a beauty sponge, but I want to show you just the cheek area. You can still see quite a lot of just some bumps and redness, especially on my nose, but it's toned down, and my dark spot here is minimized a little bit, but I would say this is a pretty sheer coverage. Now we're gonna go on the left side here. Gotta remember, it's my left, your right. And I'm gonna go in with the original BarePro over here. Same thing, 1, 2, 3, dot, and then just kind of work the rest around, and making sure that my sponge is not too wet. I'll go ahead and go in with this one. Now, the feel and consistency of the two right off the bat, you will notice a difference. The original BarePro is much more liquidy, and I'll show you on the back of my hand. Okay, so I would say pretty even comparison there. One light layer, we still have some redness, and I have a spot over here, so we've kind of got equivalent issues on either side. And so I'm gonna go ahead and build it up with a little bit more. I'll just go ahead, since I'm there with the original, I'm gonna just tap in a little more with my sponge here. I gotta try to remember that I have to kind of put a line down the center of my face. I don't do this very often, so it's hard not to blend the edges, right? My puppy is going nuts because she hasn't had a walk now in 2 days. And she really wants to get out there. Okay, so I feel like that layer covered pretty well. It's still drying down, so you see a little bit of glow. Let's go on the other side. I'm gonna do the same thing. Just dip the sponge in the actual foundation and tap it on. This consistency has a slightly more of a gel texture. Okay, obviously just fresh applied, so we're gonna let this sit for a moment, but as you can see, the coverage levels, so as far as the redness that it has covered, it completely covered my dark spot pretty well. And I feel like the coverage level on the matte side is a little better at this point, but I'm not sure if you can see on camera, and obviously it's still drying down, but we have a little more texture showing up on this side. But before we get too much into that, let's go ahead and go to the forehead on the left side. I'm gonna use my BK Beauty and the original, and let's just apply a little bit with a brush. Again, I typically like more of a medium to full coverage with this foundation, so I usually do apply it with a sponge and then just tap in a little extra coverage where I need it. But it is nice to see, if I want full coverage, how the two compare. Okay, so one light layer just with the brush tapped in, and I love that. I think it's beautiful, and you can see immediate full coverage. This is a very similar brush shape and density. This is the Luxie 680. So I'm just gonna tap the brush in that foundation. And it's interesting the difference you can feel and see immediately with this one. It's just thicker. It's thicker upon application. And do you see, like right on the hairline, you can really see a demarcation there. So I have to actually blend that out versus over here. You see nothing, like it just blends in. Okay, we're gonna work this in. Again, pretty good coverage. I have even lines across my forehead and here, and I feel like in person, these lines maybe look a little drier, but we'll see. All right, I'm gonna try to blend out those two. Okay, so I finished my eyeshadow, my brows, concealer. I've not powdered anything, but I wanted to give you kind of an up close look. I don't use any filters, just FYI, and I use my iPhone to film. So what you're seeing is pretty true to life. Hopefully, as I turn my head, the light will be able to pick it up. I will move my mirror out of the way at the end so you can really get a good picture, but this is how it looks unset, and I have not gone over anything to remove any excess makeup. So this is just kind of after sitting on my face for about 10 minutes or so. And I do feel like when I tilt my head down, maybe you can see a little bit, I feel like the pore area here is slightly less visible and more refined than here. And also right in this section, I feel like I have a little more accentuation of texture than here. Forehead, let's see. Do we see any more? Yeah, there's a little more settling in lines, but again, normally I go back at this point and touch up with my, just kind of dab over it with my beauty sponge. So I'm gonna do that on each side. So I'm just gonna go over in those parts where maybe it looks like there's a little extra product gathering, and just make sure we don't set that in with powder. Same thing over here. And I'm also going to use this. I tried to keep my concealer just under the eye, so I didn't blend it down at all. Okay, I'm going to do cream contour and powder blush so we can see how those two formulas on the cheeks last throughout the day. So on my eyes and for my contour today, I'm using this new palette from Tarte. It's the Maracuja Juicy Eye and Cheek palette, and this is the lighter version. So they have one with much deeper contour and blush shades, but this is what I have on my eyes, and I'm going to go ahead and use this contour right here. And I'm just going to use the same brush on both cheeks. I don't think this is going to change how each one of them performs, since we're using the same product on top of the foundation. So just going in, this is the BK Beauty 107 brush, and I'll list everything down below that I used in addition to the two foundations. So I feel like on both sides, the contour is blending in nicely. We'll check for any lifting of foundation, but I don't feel like it is. And again, I'm using tapping motions, so it shouldn't, but everything seems to be going over the top of it just fine. And I forgot I was going to do the tissue test before I added contour. That's all right, we'll do it for this section right here. So I'm going to try to avoid the part where I applied contour. I'm going to take tissue. Let's see. All right, we're going to do half on this side. Okay, so we do have some transfer on that side. Let's see if we have some over here. Oh, okay, a tiny little bit there, but comparison, there's a lot more transfer. I mean, it's not a ton, but there is more transfer on the matte side than the side. And as you saw me peel off the Kleenex, it was stuck to my face, whereas this side was not. Okay, let's go ahead now. I'm going to apply some powder and then blush, and we'll see how everything works. So I'm going to use the Honest Beauty. This is the Invisible Blurring Loose Powder. And I have tried a couple of powders with this new foundation, and it's not always a win. So I do feel like this foundation is a little finicky, but we're going to go in with this. Let's just see what happens today. So I'm going to, again, I'm just going to use the same powder puff on both sides because I don't think it's going to change or alter our end result. Under the eyes, I'm using the Dalton Pink Powder. If you've not seen my recent video about my secret project, go check that out. But this is in my little pink box. If you wanted to get your hands on this, get the box, because it is a much better deal if you do that. All right, and I'll just blend a little bit of this down. Okay, so for blush today, I'm going to go back to the Charlotte Tilbury. This is just the Hollywood Blush and Glow palette. I used this in my Cold Girl makeup video recently. I just love this pink blush. And this is the E4 from Morphe. I get asked a lot about this brush. It's not available, that's why I don't talk about it, but it's such a good brush. I have to continually use it. It's my favorite. I've had it for years and years. All right, getting a little blushy here. That Cold Girl makeup look is really coming into play here, huh? Okay, and then I am going to use a little bit of the bronzer shade from the Afterglow palette, also in my Dalton box. You need this palette in your life. I'm going to use the BK Beauty 103 brush and a combination of these two shades. So I go into that one and then the deeper shade, and I just love to finish the cheek like this. I think it blends, kind of tones down that blush a little bit. Of course, this blush in here is beautiful also, but for today, I wanted to have some real obvious signs of whether our blush has faded at all. So we're starting off pretty blushy here, so we will be able to tell for sure. I finished up the rest of my makeup, so let's take an up-close look. I'll give you the up-close look here and see if you can notice any differences right in this section, right here versus here. Okay, and then I have my magnifying mirror. You know, it's always scary when you pull these out, right? But we got to do it, right? We got to look. So up close, I feel like on this side, especially right here, it looks drier. And if you're new to my channel, I have combination skin, so I'm not a dry skin girl. So that's something we're going to keep an eye on throughout the day. Now, before I take a break for the next 4 hours or so, I want to just give you a few of the differences between the two foundations. I was trying to decide when I wanted to insert this information. And sometimes, you know, we do that up front and you're all just bored to tears. You're like, let's get to the demo. So I thought this is a perfect place to insert kind of the differences in ingredients, where they're made. You can have that information in the back of your brain as we're looking at things. So this new foundation, the matte foundation, is made in Italy. The original is made in the USA. Both of the foundations contain mineral sunscreen. However, the matte foundation is utilizing zinc oxide and it's 6.2%. The original, I have a new box of a darker shade that I kept. So the original has titanium dioxide and it's 3.32%. Both, however, have an SPF of 20. Both of these foundations have very similar claims. However, as the marketing pictures are shown on the Bareminerals website, on Ulta's website, they're boasting that this one has all of these extra improvements like 24-hour wear, skin improving ingredients, mineral sunscreen, long wearing, humidity resistant, sweat resistant. Guess what? Those are all of the claims on the original as well. So those claims are pretty much the same. Now, where it changes dramatically is what's inside. And I'm not a chemist, I'm not a chemical engineer, so this is just your average girl doing a dig on the website. I went to Paula's Choice Beauty Dictionary. If you've never been there, it's a wonderful tool to be able to find out what exactly these ingredients are, if they're rated good, best, horrible, or maybe they haven't investigated enough, but it'll give you information on what exactly you're seeing on ingredient labels. So I went there this morning because as I was comparing the ingredients between the two, I noticed that in the original, there are only 2 ingredients in here that have cone as a part of the name. So meaning it has some silicone ingredients in it, but they are minimal. However, in this new formulation, there are 6+ ingredients that have that cone as part of the name. And as I did a deep dive into the ingredients, that is one of the big differences that I noticed from one to the other. The new formulation has a ton of ingredients that are meant to give more slip, more glide to the skin. So lots of silicone type ingredients. And then one last final big difference in the ingredients is the new one contains alcohol. It is way far down on the ingredient list, but there is no alcohol in the original. So as I have looked side by side at the ingredients, at the claims, they are very similar. However, the main thing that they're saying with this new formulation is that it stays comfortable and flexible and has a silky feel all throughout the day, but it still boasts 24-hour wear, as does the original. Now, as I mentioned, as I was applying these two foundations, the formulation, the feel, and the viscosity, it is different. So this is the original, and I'm just gonna put a dot, you know, this is precious material here. Okay, so I'm gonna put that on my skin and just kind of hold my hand down here. And then I'm going to do the same with this one. And so you can see a difference right away. This is much more liquidy and watery. This is much more of that gel-like texture. However, even though this one is liquidy, it still has full pigment. So sometimes with a watery based formulation, you think less coverage. No, I don't find that to be true. So if I spread this one out, you can kind of see, even as it sits on the skin, you can see that this one definitely has more volume to it than this one does. Now, since both of these claim 24-hour wear and transfer humidity, sweat resistant, I wanted to show you another big difference that I noticed between the two on my makeup palette. So this is just a stainless steel makeup palette, And whenever I use the original BarePro foundation, no matter how big of a hurry I am in, I know that I have to wipe away whatever is left on this palette, or else I will literally have to scrape it off. It dries down and sets almost like paint. That sounds like a bad thing, but it's really not. Now, the new matte formulation, I have noticed it does not do the same thing. So here is the residual from the BarePro original. And it's like, it is literally dried on there. I cannot budge it. This is, and I'm gonna avoid, looks like there's a couple little spots of some oil that got on there, but I'm gonna just go around the edge here and make sure I'm just getting the actual foundation. So you can see this is still, it's not dried down. So it never fully dries down to a set finish. Let's see what happens in another 4 hours. Okay, I'm back for about the 4.5 hour mark. I just took my dog for a walk and it was freezing cold out there in that kind of damp, chilly weather. So if my cheeks are extra pink, it's because of that. But I wanted to check in and give you an up close look at how the makeup looks from side to side. So I think you can tell I just pulled out my magnifying mirror, and even without that, just in the camera looking straight ahead, I can tell obviously that this side looks a lot more matte still, and this side just has kind of a little bit of a natural glow. I'm gonna take away my mirror here so that you can see even clearer. Now, please disregard the tip of my nose. I was trying to just really gently wipe my nose. You know what happens in the cold. So if you look up close, side to side, and then as I pulled out my magnifying mirror, I feel like the makeup looks pretty much unchanged, except for the fact that I do have a little more glow. And this side just looks a little more hydrated. This side, especially here, just looks a little actually more dry, I think. I'll have to look back at pictures. I'll give you side by side on the screen of freshly applied versus now. As far as the forehead goes, I kind of feel like it's the same thing. Like this side is more matte and this side a little more kind of just of a natural dew. It's not oily by any means, but I definitely see and I feel like this side just feels a little more hydrated, a little softer. I'm trying to keep the dog's kisses off my face and keep my hands off my face too. But let's do a tissue test again. Okay, so this side doesn't feel sticky, but there's like a big old glob of like makeup right there. Okay, let me look on this side. Let's try this side too. And I'm gonna press into my nose. And that side is completely clean. That was the other thing I was gonna keep tabs on what it looks like in the crevice of the nose, because I feel like sometimes that is an indicator as well. Sometimes the makeup tends to get bunchy there. Let me look up close on each side. I feel like the Bareminerals side looks a little cleaner and this side just looks like it's gathered just a little bit. So we will leave it there and I will be back in about another 4 hours and we'll see how it looks. Okay guys, I'm back for the final check-in. It's been 8.5 hours. I'm ready to take out my contacts and wash my face. So we're gonna call this wear test. We're gonna bring it to an end. Normally when I wear this foundation, it's on 12 to 16 hours when I wear the original, but I'm not gonna stay up till midnight, 2 a.m. to keep it on that long. So let's do a final check-in. I'm gonna show you up close and then I'll pull out my magnifying mirror and we'll talk through some things. So let me give you the close-up shot here. So original BarePro, matte BarePro, forehead where we applied with a brush. Okay, I think actually the forehead on both sides is hanging together pretty well, but I want you to first, let's talk about what's going on in the crease of the nose. Now on the tip of my nose, you can see it's worn off. I was wiping my nose and then my dog licked it, so we're gonna ignore this right here. But let's look at what the sides of the nose here. Compare, this is up close and personal. So what is going on right here? Let me pull out my magnifying glass. my magnifying glass, my magnifying mirror. See, it's late. I need to go to bed. All right, so on this side, it's hanging together and still looking pretty good, like almost like it was freshly applied. However, on this side, do you see what's happening in the crease of the nose? How the makeup looks like it's gathering and simultaneously it looks like the skin is drying out and getting flaky. This is what starts to happen for me later on at the 10 to 12 hour mark down here on this part of the face. Now, right now, this still looks pretty dry compared to this. Now, I do have a smile line here that every single foundation will sink into at a certain point a little bit. So I don't knock the original for having that little bit of settling there. But right here, and then you can see even on the cheeks, the difference. So from here, this side looks still pretty perfected and you can't see the texture much, but up close, I can see the texture is starting to become more pronounced. And in my previous days, when I have tested this on the full face, the matte version, I have tried several different skin prepping products as far as serums and moisturizers, sunscreen. So I've rotated several different ones. Today's combination is probably the best. It's held up the best, but still my skin on this side feels dry and tight and on the verge of irritated. So it kind of feels like I've put something on my skin with alcohol that has been drying it out all day. This is supposed to be skin improving and your skin is supposed to look better over a week and longer, the longer you use it. However, I've not found that to be the case. When I've used it a couple days in a row, my skin starts feeling drier and drier. And by the 8 to 10 hour mark, depending on what I've done skin prep wise, there were a couple of days, like yesterday being one of them, I could not wait to wash this off my face because it looked dry and crackly and separated and polka dot pores all over this region. And I'm an oily skin girl, combo oily skin girl. We've been having rain, so it's been humid. So I just don't know what's going on, whether it's just the multiple silicone-based ingredients in here that are supposed to add hydration, but actually do the opposite on my skin. I don't know. But I don't get that with the original. So the original, you can see I do have a little bit more glow than when I freshly applied it, but it's still hanging in place. My skin actually feels still hydrated and soft and supple. That's what this side is supposed to feel like, and it does not. What a difference 2 more hours makes with this makeup. This is the 10.5 hour check-in. Okay, hopefully this will give you a better idea. Do you see how dry and the skin looks almost flaky? But then we have so much oil breaking through. Forehead, collection on the sides of the nose. But the biggest thing for me is what I'm seeing here. And hopefully the camera is picking all of that up. For this final trial, I'm going to do what my best friend did recently when she tested out this foundation, and it looked a lot better on her at the end of the day. So this third trial, I'm going to use the Laura Geller Spackle Skin Perfecting Primer, and this is the bronze shade. So we're just going to put 2 pumps of that. I have already moisturized my skin and used sunscreen. I used all of the same base or skincare products as before. And then to apply the foundation, I'm going to use the Stands Out sponge, which I have not yet used with this new version of the BarePro foundation. But I do love this sponge. Just haven't pulled mine out in a while. So over that primer, obviously it's a slightly glowy primer. So initially it's not quite as matte as quickly. I'm gonna apply concealer and then we'll do powder and a setting spray. All right, concealer's on. I used cream contour just as before, but I am gonna use powder blush today. So let's powder. I'm gonna use a different powder this time. This is the Makeup Forever Micro HD Finishing Powder, HD Micro Finishing Powder, that's it. And this was the powder also that my best friend used. I love this powder as well. Now I have tested this powder with this foundation, but not in this combination with the primer, and we're gonna do setting spray. So I'm gonna use a damp beauty sponge to apply the powder. And then I'm going to go ahead and spray, finishing spray. I'm gonna use the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Flawless Finish Setting Spray. This, in my mind, is the only one that does make a difference with certain foundations that need a setting spray. So let's do this. The rest of my makeup is finished, hair is done, so let me give you the up-close look here. And I do feel like of the 3 days of testing that I have done here on camera, this is probably the best it's looked, and it did still feel a little bit tight. My skin feels a little tight and dry, but not quite as much, and that's probably because we have that primer that's adding a little extra hydration underneath. Let me take the phone over to the window. Now it's cloudy and rainy today, so it's not gonna be bright sunshine, but it will be natural daylight, so you can get another look at how this looks in natural daylight. Okay, here we are. This is as bright as it's gonna be. So let me give you the up-close look. Back at the end of the day for 11-hour check-in, and here is what the makeup looks like now. So even in person and in my magnifying mirror, I have to say the makeup looks so much better than it has either, or actually I should say any of the times that I have worn this foundation. Now it is still gathered in the side of the nose there, a little bit of splitting here at my smile line, but it's not bad. I don't have that extreme dry crackly look here. I am a little shiny, but I think after 11 hours, and I did go to the gym. I didn't really work hard enough to sweat at all, but I did go to the gym. I had a full day and I feel like the makeup hung in there well. My face does still feel a little bit kind of dry and a little tiny bit itchy underneath, but to touch my makeup, it doesn't feel super oily. A little bit here, and then here on the side of the nose, I'm getting a little bit off when I touch that. But on the cheeks, it still feels kind of matte and powdery. So if you hear my puppy, she's in here. It's like after 10 o'clock at night, and she's ready to play. So forgive those noises. So in conclusion, I'm very glad I did this final test with the primer, with the setting spray, because now I know that with both of those, this foundation can work. However, my feelings are still, I think, the same in the fact that the original BarePro is still my favorite, gonna be my go-to, and I've just purchased several backups on the Bareminerals website because with that foundation, I don't have to use a primer or a setting spray to get this kind of long wear. I also don't have that kind of dry, tingly feel on the skin after a full day of wearing that. However, on the flip side, I'm glad to know that this foundation can work. It just needs a few helpers. So I will continue to use the bottle that I purchased on occasion when I want to test out primers, but I don't think this is going to be one that I plan to repurchase. So I hope that you found this video helpful and all of the wear tests. Thank you for hanging in there. If you are a diehard fan of the original formula like I am, Bareminerals said that you need to email their customer service. I'll put that email down in the description box down below. You can also call them and let them know that you do not want them to discontinue this original formulation. In my mind, they can keep both. I mean, Estee Lauder Double Wear now has, what, 4 different types of formulations, and they have continued to keep the original. why can't Bareminerals do the same thing, right? So check the description box down below for links and a list of everything that I used in all of these wear tests, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.